Hello and welcome to lesson 16. This is level A2 with Perfectly Spoken. My name is Natalie and today's class we are talking about making suggestions. Shall we start? Okay, let's begin. Okay, so here in this lesson, we will talk about making suggestions, how to answer, and I will give you lots and lots of examples. So make sure you have your notebook and your pen ready, okay? All right, here we go. So, first of all, let's look at this picture. Look at this lovely family here having a very nice picnic. Oh, so you've got mother, father, two children, and I think, is it a girl and a boy, maybe? Yes, I think so. Okay, now have a look at this conversation between the people in the family. So, what do you want to do after lunch? What do you want to do after lunch? Shall we go for a walk? Shall we go for a walk? Oh, yes, Daddy. Can we feed the ducks? And you can see on the picture there, hello, duck. That's a duck. Okay, all right. So, hello, Daddy. Can we feed the ducks? Feed means to give food to an animal or a child. Okay, so it's to give food to. So, yes, Daddy. Can we feed the ducks? Oh, yes. What about taking the ducks some bread? Okay, the conversation continues. Oh, no, that's not a good idea. Bread isn't good for ducks. Now, that's actually true. It's bread is bad for their stomachs. It's not good to give bread to ducks, okay? And in England, it's a very typical activity to go to a park or near a river and to feed the ducks some bread. But in fact, bread is not a good option for ducks. There we are. Extra information. So there you go. With Perfectly Spoken, you get lots of information about life. Okay. So, no, that's not a good idea. Bread isn't good for ducks. What about some fruit? Fruit. Notice the pronunciation. Fruit. Fruit is like apples, oranges, mandarins, pears, melons, okay, pineapple. So what about some fruit? Notice it's fruit, not fruit or fruit. No, fruit. What about some fruit? Do ducks like fruit? I don't know. Let's go and see. Let's go and see. Okay. Now we are going to look at the conversation and look at some of the language you can find and you can see in this conversation. Okay, so let's go. So the first part of the conversation, you've got, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? So this is a very typical question you ask, and you can ask this question asking about now or in general, but also it's a question you can ask about the future. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do this or this? Okay, so here I will show you some examples, right? So you've got, what do you want to do later? What do you want to do after the film? What do you want to do at the weekend? Where do you want to go tonight? Here you've got a different question word. Where? Where does he want to celebrate his birthday? Okay, listen to the pronunciation. It's what do you want? What do you want? Not what do you want? What do you want to do later? No. What do you want to do later? What do you want to do later? What do you want to do after the film? What do you want to do at the weekend? Where do you want to go tonight? Where does he want to celebrate his birthday? Where does he want to celebrate his birthday? Practice reading these questions and compare your pronunciation with my pronunciation, okay? So here, it's interesting to notice that these questions, they're in the present simple, but we are asking a question about the future. And that's okay. That's okay. In a lot of languages, you do the same thing. So use what do you want plus infinitive. So what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Where does he want to celebrate? Where do they want to have lunch? Okay, so it's a very useful question. Now, after that question, let's go back. We're going to go back now to the conversation and see some of the suggestions that the people, I think it's the father mostly, make in the conversation. Okay, so let's look at the language now. Okay, so is the conversation again. What do you want to do after lunch? Shall we go for a walk? Yes, Daddy, can we feed the ducks? Yes, what about taking the ducks some bread? So here you can see in green here, we've got two ways. Wait, let me do this. It's quite complicated. Okay, we've got two ways of making suggestions. You've got, shall we go for a walk? Or what about taking the ducks some bread? So there are two ways of making suggestions. The word shall is a very interesting word. It's from the word, well, it's kind of an old English word we used for will. But now, really, we only use it for making suggestions, okay? So it's not a word you see very often. So let's look at some examples. I think that's the best way to completely understand, okay? So we'll look at some examples now, all right? So you've got shall we plus infinitive. Shall we go for a walk? Shall we meet at 6? Shall we order a pizza? Shall I cook dinner? Here you've got a different person. You've got shall I. Notice the pronunciation. Okay. You've got shall we or shall I? 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 Sounds like one word. Almost sounds like an Arabic word, no? Shall I? Okay, right, so with shall, because it's kind of this old English word and we use it really just for making suggestions, right? We don't really use it with other persons. It's just for making suggestions. So we use I or we because it's your suggestion. Okay, it's your suggestion. So it's either I in singular or we in plural. Okay, and then we've also got another one, which is what about. Now, what about, we use this a lot. I mean, a lot. Okay, so what about plus ing? So he says, what about feeding the ducks? What about feeding? So notice it's different. Huh? In shall, you use the infinitive, and in what about, you use ing. Or we use a noun. Let's look. We've got what about ordering pizza? What about fruit? So we use this a lot with the noun as well. Okay. So for example, what do you want to do tonight? What about playing cards? No? Okay. What about reading a good book? No? Okay. What about what's this? Look. Cooking a nice dinner. No? Okay. What about ordering a pizza? Yes, that's a good idea. That's a very good idea. Okay. All right. And with a noun, for example, what shall I buy? Notice we use shall in the question here. What shall I buy my father for Christmas? What shall I buy my father? What shall I buy? What shall I buy? Shall I buy a book, maybe? I don't know. So you can say, what about a book? What about a pen? What about a phone? What about, have I got anything else? What about, yes. What about, I have something here, just a second. What about a DVD? A DVD. Do you watch DVDs? In my house, we watch DVDs, but what about a DVD? So, yes. So two very, very, very common ways of making suggestions. You will find this language everywhere, okay? All right, so now, just a reminder about form. You've got shall we plus infinitive, so shall we go, shall we meet, shall we order, shall I cook? And then about plus ing. Why? Because about is a preposition. And if you have a preposition and then a verb, then it's in the ing form. Okay, so what about feeding the ducks? What about ordering? And here in purple, you can see there, you've got what about fruit? So the example with the noun. Okay, now we are going to go back to the conversation and have a look at some more of the language. Shall we begin? Yes, let's begin. Okay, so this is the answers here. Okay, so you've got, so the man said, for example, shall we go and feed the ducks? What about feeding them some bread? And the woman says, no, that's not a good idea. Bread isn't good for ducks. Here we are. You can see in green. Yeah, you can see in the green. He says, I don't know. Let's go and see. Let's go. Let's go. This is another way of making a suggestion, but it's a really kind of enthusiastic, like, let's begin. I think at the beginning of most of the classes, I think I use this. I always say, let's begin, or let's start, or let's look at this, or shall we begin? Shall we start? Okay. So it's very, very, very common. All right. And here are some more examples for you. You've got let's go. Let's plus infinitive. Now the let's is two words. Okay, so it's let and then In fact, it's us, but we never say it separately. Never, 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 never. It's always together, right? So even though it means let us, it's an expression, we always contract it. We always contract it. So it's just let's. Let's go, let's start, let's finish, let's do a dictation, let's look at the grammar, let's listen again. Okay, lots of examples. So here's some more examples for you. Let's start a WhatsApp group. Let's study English together. Let's watch the live lesson. Okay. So lots of examples of let's. Okay. So just, sorry. Now I'm just going to show you, because I think seeing the language in context is very important. So let's look at some examples, some more examples with the three ways of making suggestions. Okay, so we've got some examples with shall. Shall we? And here it's a question. Yeah? You remember I said we use it a lot. Question, shall we go to the cinema? Shall we have lunch in the new Japanese restaurant? Shall we get a takeaway pizza? Shall I cook dinner for you? That's a good idea. Shall I turn the heating on? It's very cold. The heating is, I don't know if you can see here. Wait, let me move out the way. Can you see here? I have behind the plant here, I have a radiator. This is part of the heating system, and heating is very important at the moment because it's very cold. So, shall I turn the heating on? Oh, yes, please. Okay, now some more examples with what about? So we've got what about going to the cinema? Notice the pronunciation. It's not what about, no. What about, we kind of join them together. It's what about, what about, what about, what about. Try it, you try it. What about, what about, what about. Okay, so we've got what about going to the cinema? What about meeting at that new restaurant? What about 7? What about Italian? That's like the type of food. Like, where do you want to eat? What about Italian? What about Japanese? What about Thai? Okay, very typical question in England because we don't really have a cuisine. So we have lots of different types of restaurants. Okay, I know some people probably don't agree with that. But anyway, that was just my opinion. Shh. Okay. What about Ben and Claire? What about Tuesday? Notice pronunciation. Tuesday. What about Tuesday? Okay. And yeah, I highlighted that because that's talking about food. So now we're going to do a very quick summary of the 3 ways, 3 very common ways of making suggestions. Okay, so we've got what about plus ing or noun. Shall I or shall we plus infinitive, or let's go. So let's plus infinitive. Okay, now what we are going to do is I want you to look at these questions, right? Let me just put it on for you. And we're going to focus on how to answer the questions. Okay, so Somebody makes a suggestion. Shall we go to the cinema? Should we go to the cinema? You can say, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Or you can say, that's not a good idea. Or that isn't a good idea. It's the same. Well, okay, great. Oh, no, I don't want to. Shall we stay in? Okay. So it's good if you say, no, I don't want to. It's polite to give an alternative. Yeah. So remember that that's not and that isn't. They're both exactly the same. You can contract them in both ways. Okay. Now we are going to look here at an example conversation. Okay. So you can pause this conversation at any time so that you have time to read it and to kind of process the information. I will read the conversation so that you have an opportunity to read and listen at the same time. That's very good for pronunciation. Okay. And my suggestion is that you pause the video and you can read the conversation, maybe even if you have a friend, you and a friend could practice the conversation and maybe change some of the suggestions. Okay, it's just a suggestion. All right, so let's have a look at the example conversation. Let's go out for dinner tonight. Okay, what about Italian? No, I don't want Italian. What about Japanese? No, that's not a good idea. I'm allergic to fish. What about Lebanese? Okay, that's a good idea. What time? What about 7? Great. Where is the restaurant? Ah, it's in the town centre. Shall we go by bus? Okay. Shall we meet at the bus stop? That's a good idea. Let's meet at 6:30. Okay, so here, in the end, what type of restaurant are they going to? What type of restaurant? Yes, they're going to the Lebanese. And what time are they meeting? Notice present continuous for future. What time are they meeting at the bus stop? Is it 7 o'clock or 6:30? Yes, 6:30. They are meeting at the bus stop at 6:30 so they can go to the restaurant. Where is the restaurant? Where is it? Yes, it's in the town centre. Remember, you have village, town, city? So yeah, it's in the town centre. Okay, and why are they not going to the Japanese restaurant? Why? Yes, because one person is allergic to fish. Okay, all right. So now I'm going to give you an opportunity just to look at the conversation again, and then I'm going to give you a little test. Okay, shall we look one more time? Right, okay, so now I am going to put on the screen now for you the conversation, but it has some parts missing. So have a look and see if you can complete the gaps of the conversation. Okay? All right, are you ready? You can pause the video if you want to write it down, or you can just try to remember. It's a good idea to write it because it will help you to remember. Okay? All right, so here we go. Right. Okay. Are you ready to look at the answers? Yes? Okay, well, here we go. So the first one, let's go out for dinner tonight. Okay, what about, remember pronunciation, what about Italian? No, I don't want Italian. What about Japanese? No, that's not a good idea. I'm allergic to fish. What about Lebanese? Okay, that's a good idea. What time? What about 7? Wait, here I've put great. In fact, you can say great, fantastic, okay, perfect, why not, excellent idea. Okay, I just put great, but any explanation, any exclamation is acceptable. So, okay, fantastic, brilliant, perfect. So any of those, but here we have great. All right. So great. Where is the restaurant? It's in the town centre. No, that was wrong. Shall we go by bus? Shall we go by bus? Shall we? It's actually more difficult to pronounce because it's shall we. Shall I is kind of, but shall we? Shall we? Okay. Okay. Shall we meet at the bus stop? Shall we meet at the bus stop? That's a good idea. You can also say that's a great idea. That's a fantastic idea. That's an excellent idea. That's a brilliant idea. Okay. So if you want to expand your vocabulary and your complexity of your language, you can say, that's a fantastic idea, that's a good idea, that's a brilliant idea, that's a great idea. Okay, let's meet at 6:30. Let's meet at 6:30. Let's meet at 6:30. So remember, it's the infinitive with let's, okay? Right, so well done. Now, my suggestion is, what about writing a dialogue? A dialogue between you and a friend, and try to use shall I, shall we, let's, and what about? What about plus ing, and what about plus noun? And try to use lots of different suggestions. Go out, stay in, go to the cinema, cook dinner, because that's a very good way to recycle some of the vocabulary. Do you remember we did a long time ago, we did a lesson on entertainment and sports. You can use this in this conversation. And I think, yeah, when we were talking about the present continuous, we used a lot of activities like go out, stay in, meet friends, etc. So don't forget you can use that vocabulary in this conversation, and it's a very good way to practice and practice, practice, practice. Okay. All right. So that is the end of the class. Well done. Let's just have a look here. What did we do in this lesson? We did making suggestions. What about shall and let's? How to answer, for example, that's a good idea, that's not a good idea, and I don't want to. And please remember, please do not feed the ducks. Okay, so that is the end of today's class. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in lesson 17. Can't believe it. Okay, so well done. If you are at lesson 17, you're doing very, very, very well. Okay, so see you then. Okay, bye.